The Executive Order 10 signed by President Buhari has been causing so much issues and commotions all around the country since he did it last Friday, that's 22nd May. We're going to be discussing what this thing is really about, what the commotion is about, and we're just going to be passing all the different statements that have been made about it. So we're really going to be going deep into it, but first make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, that's Nigerian Sealed. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and make sure you like the page on Facebook. Now let's get to work. According to this, again, like I said, Buhari signed it on Friday. But first, what is the order about? It's actually granting financial autonomy. I know this seems like big words, but first let me finish. Okay, financial autonomy to the state judiciaries and state legislative bodies, so which means the house of assemblies in the states, those houses of assembly in the states, and then the courts, different courts, the judiciary, the judges and all of that in the states are now going to be able to get their payment without passing through the executive branch of the state, that is through the governors, which means the governors are not going to be able to have influence on those bodies anymore, especially through the payments, because the normal or the status quo now is that the governors have a say in determining when those people get their salaries, when they get their payments, their whatever it's going to be, the payments coming from the federal allocation, they get everything, and those governors decide how the people are going to get it, the people in the judiciary and the legislators are going to get it, which means they have a lot of influence on those people. So now it's very not so surprising when you discover that all the governors in the 36 states are bunching together, especially this week, I think it was on Wednesday, and discussing how they are going to be able to deal with this, writing to the federal government and asking for a reversal of this thing, that it is getting too far and all of that, complaining that it was just a little while ago that they granted financial autonomy to the local governments, that how are they going to be doing it again to the legislative body and the judiciary body within the state, which means they are going to be losing. In fact, one of the governors actually stated it very bluntly that they will be losing their influence on those bodies. Now, what does this really mean to you? Like, in the regular Nigerian hearing this, it's going to be like, what are they now complaining about? What are the governors complaining about? For God's sake, what are they complaining about? What this bill is supposed to do, okay, it's not a bill right now, it's an executive order. What it is supposed to do is that it should sever the ties between the governors and the legislative, that is the House of Assembly in the state. So it should sever the ties and with the courts too, which means they are not going to be able to do anything to those people if those people are not following the directives from the governors. So that's what it's actually about, which is like, to anybody with half a brain, it's a good thing. Honestly, it's going to be a good thing, which means things are going to go a lot smoother in the state, a lot more smoothly in the state. Things are going to be a lot, like, judgments will be a lot more dependable, because the politicians are not going to be having so much influence on the judges like before. The governor isn't going to be having so much influence on the judge like before, when that the governor doesn't actually have power to control the salaries and to control the entitlements of those people. So that's the way I see it. It's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing. So on both sides, they are being claiming, and the governors on one side and then the federal government on another side, which of course includes the lawyers, the judges, the state legislators, which of course they are the ones being defended, being given financial autonomy by the federal government. So those ones are on one side, and then we have the governors on the other side, and both sides are accusing each other of violating the constitution. That's the 1999 constitution as amended. Now they are accusing each other of violating the constitution, which is very weird. Like, how can two different arguments be violating the constitution at the same time? Opposing arguments, like, it's very awkward. But according to them, the governor said that the president doesn't have the right to be doing this, that it is actually getting to an extent where he's acting like an authoritarian. So he's basically acting like General Muhammadu Buhari, not like a President Muhammadu Buhari. So that's what they're actually accusing him of, that he is going too far with all these executive orders and all of that. That if anything is going to be done like this, it should be done by the houses of and the House of Assembly, and of course the Senate, that's the National House of Assembly, like just NAS. So that's it should be passed as a law, like a legislative law in the House of Assembly. So that's what they have been saying, that it should not be something that the president just decides on a whim to do something like this, that this thing is too consequential for the president to just do it. Some of them even say that they are not actually against it, that they have actually been in talks with the president on this and trying to find a model of autonomy that can work for the states. So it's not like maybe they are just trying to prevent the states, or the legislative branch of the state and also the judiciaries of the state from having any sort of autonomy, but they are just trying to work together and see which sort of model is going to be the best. So that's what they said. They have been having meetings with the federal government, and suddenly the federal government just decided that it was going to do it on their own, that the federal government was just going to do it by itself, and just left the governors out, almost like blindsided the governors. So they were shocked. So that's why they have been complaining. So honestly, this is actually the reason why they've been complaining. So it's like, okay, we have been planning on a particular thing, and suddenly you guys just pulled it out of our feet. You just pulled the rug out of our feet, which means there might be like some sort of sinister thing attached, maybe a sinister reason attached, something crooked attached to it. So that's what the governors are worried about, that why is the federal government so interested in the autonomy of these branches of government, that they are just so set on it. And honestly, if you really look at, let's say you are somebody that is is a cynic, and you feel like the federal government is being cynical in this issue, you are going to start thinking that, is this just a ploy for the federal government to try to have influence on those bodies too, so that it's almost like they're trying to pry out the influence that the governors have on the judiciary and the legislative of state, and transferring that ability and that power directly to the federal government? Is that what is actually happening? Because all these politicians are basically the same. So if governors are doing these things towards the judiciary, they can hold off salaries or whatever, or at least they have the threats of being able to hold off salaries, of being able to hold off payments, and all sorts of things like that. So it means that you are transferring that to the federal government, which is on when you talk about federalism in the actual sense, doesn't really make sense when it comes to federalism, because federalism means that the government with more power should be the ones close, like the government with more power should be the one closest to the people. So the local government should actually have more power to decide on things than a state government, and the state government should be able to decide on things that are more consequential to the lives of people than the federal government, which is far away in Abuja. The federal government doesn't really know what is happening over maybe at one particular local government in Abia State. Understand? So it should be those people, the local government in that particular local area in Abia State, that should have the ability to do things on ground, because they are the ones that will be able to do things that will matter. They will be able to, the people in the community will be able to keep them and make sure that those people are accountable. So you'll be able to keep them accountable because they are basically living in the same community. So that's the argument for federalism. So they are like, okay, are you really sure that this thing is in the interest of a positive goal, that the federal government is doing this, or there's something behind it that we can't see? And it's actually because we don't really trust our government officials in Nigeria. Like every single Nigerian has this belief: we don't trust them. That's just it. There's no hiding. We don't trust them. So it's like maybe that's the reason why the government oppose it, because they're like, okay, the government is now going to, like the federal government is now going to snatch this ability from us and be able to wield this ability by itself, and then use that maybe in situations if the governor is not behaving well, they can actually fight the governor with the judiciary and the legislative of the state, which it's something very cynical if you think about it, which means the federal government can actually control things going on in the internal matters of states. So that's one of the reasons why the governors are like fulminating right now. So honestly, this is what is going on all around. It's just the situation. But if, let's just assume now that the federal government is not being cynical, it's not being very duplicitous in this situation, let's assume it's in good conscience. If it's actually in good conscience, honestly, this might be the best action taken by Buhari since he got elected in 2015. Honestly, this might be the best action because it's going to give those people a chance to be able to, get free from the shackles of the state governors. But again, it's like leaving one shackle to the probability that you won't be in another shackle by the federal government. So who really knows? Like when you're living in a country like Nigeria, nothing is really free. You don't really have total freedom like that. But let's see what is going to happen. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. It's Naija Unsealed on all the platforms. I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Again, there's always a video every single day. Bye.